Are we filming? Yes, we are. Bit of an impromptu video. It's not one I had planned, but it's one that I need to make immediately. It refers to these memo books. I have got I'm looking over, I've probably got about 30 or 40 of these. Very, very good. Very good. Very good for fountain pen. And recently I have been using these out. So I might have been sitting in a cafe having a coffee, because that's I think that enhances my creative side. If I'm sitting in a cafe, make a coffee that someone else has made rather than in my kitchen or the studio or something. Although I must say, this is very nice, and thank you very much, Neil. But this has been my weapon of choice for the purposes of jotting down things, whether it's an initiative or something I need to add in my diary later, or videos. And when I say diary later, it is because I generally don't carry my main diary, which is my personal sized Me Plus. It could quite easily be a plotter. I like these slimline ones, as you know, and I've got loads of slimline ones, but right now my favourite just happens to be the Me Plus. Nice leather, Pueblo leather from Italy, Krauss rings, superb. And this is really nice. I prefer this for one or two reasons, but I prefer this over a plotter, because plotter you only get small rings because that is part of their design philosophy, and I totally respect that. But with Me Plus you get a choice, and these are 18mm rings, and it just gives me so much more room to work with in a convenient thing. And I'm using this at home, so I could easily use an A4 diary if I wanted, but this is good. This is okay. But I generally don't take it away from home, but partly because the paper I use, which is the 50 GSM Clairefontaine paper, which I really, really love, but is not really ideal for fountain pen use. Whereas the Sylvine memo book has paper that is very, very fountain pen friendly. I'm using typically a fine nib, and the reason why I'm using these fine cheap ones is because I've got about 100 of these, and many of them are filled with inks of different colours, because I just love using these inks. So this is kind of a good setup for me at the moment. But there's always a but, isn't there? I like the word but. Something happened yesterday, Monday. So I'm recording this in early November 2025. This was in my bag, visiting a local cafe, and this was in my bag. And on the back of my backpack, I have a zipped pocket, and this is where it goes in. And someone helped themselves. Now, I don't know when it happened, because pickpockets, thieves are very, very adept. But in maybe 55 years of carrying a notebook, I've had my first theft from my person as I'm away from home. Now, I suspect that they reached in, took what they wanted, i.e. took whatever they found, i.e. luckily they left the pen, but you know the pen isn't any it's not a real distraction for me. But if they want a pen, they could have asked me and I would have given them a pen, frankly. But I'm not saying it is a catastrophe, but it is a lesson to learn, a very painful lesson. Not in the grand scheme of things, but to me it's painful, because in here I had the last 3 weeks of initiatives, ideas, and I was working on an exciting project for another channel, and I have lost all those notes because I was foolish enough to just have these notes, everything in one place. And I thought to myself, well, no one's going to steal a notebook. They might steal something that looks luxurious, and that's the reason I don't carry this. But they're not gonna swipe this. I mean, I was originally thinking, here I am having it on the desk, and someone might snatch it, but they're not going to snatch this. They might snatch something made of nice leather, but they're not going to snatch a notebook. But I think what happened was they must have taken it out of the bag, and rather than carefully put it back in for my convenience, they just discarded it somewhere. And I don't have I didn't have anything to say, if found, please return to my email address or something, which is something that is probably a good idea if you have a specific email address for that purpose, because you don't want people to know your main email address. But I didn't do that, so it's my loss. Luckily, there were no details in there. There were no specifics, just general ideas. Be interesting to see whether... No, they're not going to start a channel with my ideas, of course not. But I was. This is really... I wouldn't say I feel really down about it, but it is a lesson. It is a lesson to learn that I have to be more careful with what I'm doing. So I feel embarrassed that here I am extolling the virtues of taking care of books and notebooks when out and about, etc., especially from a point of view of robberies. And here I am being on the receiving end of that, shock, horror. But, it happens. And do you know what? I am glad it's happened, because it's given me a massive, massive wake-up call and an opportunity to share this with you. I mean, I didn't have to, because I'd like to think I come across as knowing what I'm doing. So sharing with you that I've made a mistake it is I have to be self-effacing about this. I'm a victim of robbery when I shouldn't have had this in a zipped compartment on the back of my backpack. Should have been in my jacket pocket, maybe. So it's just complacency. But it means that I will be careful in the future. And thank goodness it's only just a memo book with 3 weeks. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do to prevent this from happening? Apart from the normal things like, don't keep this in a zip pocket on the back of your backpack while you're in the queue for the checkouts at Tesco, which I think is where it happened. Tesco is a leading supermarket chain in the UK. So this is what I've decided to do, because I have got used to using many notebook systems when I'm out and about. One of them is, let me see if I can get out. This is my filofaxes Portland D-ringed with treasury tags, and I was using this as a diary, but I've stopped using it because, as you know from a previous video, I became aware that I was being targeted on the street, and they were after this, possibly my wallet. So I keep this out of sight. I'm using it as a wallet with some paper in an emergency, but I'm not sitting at a cafe using this paper because it could be swiped. The focus of all my energy is on what I'm writing at that creative moment, not on half cocked on what I'm writing, and then spending the other half of my cognitive ability on looking around to see if anyone's passing by that might reach out and snatch it. So I have kind of stopped doing that, and this is now kind of my wallet with some paper rather than my main diary with some credit cards. So let's just put that away for the moment. But I should have used an inside pocket. So what can I do about this? And there is a system that I have kind of spoken about before, but I want to reiterate it, and I'm kind of reminding myself. So I could be using this, or I could be using, as I often find myself doing, a single sheet of A4 fold this in 3, and then I can use this to write on. But this is the thing. What I am going to be very, very careful of is having some sort of paper or notebook system where I am writing for several days, one sheet of paper. So potentially I could lose several days worth of notes, which I wouldn't be too happy about. So how am I going to do this? Well, I will religiously from now on, any notes I make that particular day, I will, when I bring them home, I will put them in a basket or a cardboard box or a paper bag hanging on the back of the door of the kitchen, whatever, some sort of receptacle. I mean, David Allen, the father of GTD, talks about the basket, a physical basket where you put all your notes if you're in the analog world, to put them in the basket and sort everything out from that basket. Excuse my French, but I think that's a really, really good idea, because then it doesn't matter what format you could be. Could be carrying your filofax, you'd be carrying a single piece of paper, you could be carrying a notebook, you could be carrying a single insert from your filofax, but it's all going to go from now on into the proverbial basket or box or bag. What am I going to do with that? Especially entries that pertain to my diary. So it's a threefold thing. So I will jot something down, and I found myself today, a couple of things I needed to add to my diary, and what I actually did was use a voice memo on my phone, but that's just because I was eating and having a coffee, and I just, the table was slightly sticky, so I didn't want to use a piece of paper on the sticky. You know how it is. We've all been there. Just a bit of a spit and sawdust cafe, as we say in the UK. So that is one way of recording a diary that you have to, that in a transitional phase. So I made a voice memo on my iPhone, which is now in here, because when I got back, I remembered that I had made a voice memo, and then I just listened to it and then added it to my diary. However, I also added it to my iPhone. I do a belt and braces thing, so that I have an online diary using the Apple's calendar app. I mean, different apps available. A lot of you use the Google Calendar app. I use the Apple one because I've been caught by Apple. I've got these different devices. So if you add a memo, or in this case a diary entry in your calendar app, then it appears on my iMac and my MacBook, etc. And that's great for me. This is what I'm going to do from now on. And it sounds long-winded, but it is something that I really, really think is a good strategy. So however you make your recording, it could be a voice memo, or mainly, to be honest, 99% of what I write down is actually written down, hardcore analog. It all goes into the proverbial basket, and then two things happen. I get the entry, let's say this is an entry here, and I make sure that it goes in my paper-based diary, and then it goes into my Apple Calendar app. So there's two things. Then this note gets put through the shredder, or it actually goes into a box so that I can do the shredding in once a week. So it goes in the shredder box. I'm doing things in triplicate, aren't I? I am writing a note. I'm capturing a thought or a note or a date or a reminder. I'm capturing it generally on paper, goes into a central processing unit. I'm mixing up my terms here, analog and digital, but it's going into the basket is the central processing unit. So they all go into the basket, and then when I take them out at my leisure, same day, but generally when I get home having a coffee or whatever, they get processed religiously every day. That's what's going to happen. I have done in the past. I have lapsed and I've become complacent and lazy. I am going to this loss of mine through my own complacency will be a lesson that I will learn well, I'm sure. But everything goes into a central area, basket, central processing unit. I take them out one at a time, and I do it in this order. I add it first to my diary. I then add it to my Apple Calendar, where if I'm by the laptop, I'll add it on the laptop. If I'm by the phone, I'll add it on the phone. If I'm by the iMac, I'll add it on the iMac. So, and then I put this in the shredder. And that means that I have got 2 records of everything. I can, if I lose a notebook, I can look at it on the phone. If I lose my phone, it's in the notebook. The worst can happen is that on a particular given day, I lose maybe through robbery, my phone and my notebook, which is unlikely to happen, but it might. Okay, but if that happens, I will only lose a day's worth of data, which hopefully I will be able to remember in my mind. But this is the thing: even if I lose my notebook and my phone, and I lose my memory as well, all is not lost, because I can pick this up out of the box of stuff to be shredded and re-add it. So it is more than doing things in it's a 3-stage process, but with a backup by removing these out of the shredder box, because I just leave them for a week before I do a batch shredding. And so I think that's a fairly foolproof system. And it is a little bit long-winded, but not that much long-winded. If you're out and about, it's very, very fast, as we both know, as you and I know. It's very easy to get a piece of paper out of your pocket and jot something down. It is faster doing that than faffing about with a binder like this or your phone. Just jot them down, put them in your pocket, take them home, bish bosh bash. Or should that be bish bash bosh? I think it should be bish bash bosh. And another UK bit of I don't know whether that's Cockney or what, bish bash bosh. I'll have to find the source of that, but it sounds good. It sounds good. I'm happy with it, so I'll take it. I'll take that. But anyway, there's a moral of the story here. Try and avoid having your stuff nicked, because it can be. If someone nicks your notebook instead of your wallet, they're not going to say, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind putting this back in your pocket?" They're just going to pocket it and then discard it when they're round the corner. They're not going to give it to you back. You're not going to get it back. So I'm going to rest my case, and I'm going to finish my coffee, which is rapidly going cold. I'll probably have to put it in the microwave again, because it's a very, very nice coffee. But again, thank you all for watching. Until my next video, goodbye.